I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker, joining us from Galway in Ireland. So a warm welcome to Ruairi Conroy. He's a Vice President of Sales Development and Galway site lead at Diligent, the global leader in modern governance. At Diligent, which is one of our top inspired workplaces this year, so congratulations. Ruairi oversees a team of 70 people, driving growth across the EMEA, APAC, and Americas regions. With extensive experience across companies like SiteMinder and Google, Ruairi will share insights on how to align employees' personal aspirations and organizational goals in his presentation titled The Talent Compass, Guiding Your Team to their North Star. Learn how Diligent's personal development plan framework empowers employees to discover their why and creates a purpose-driven culture. Welcome, Ruairi.
Martha, thank you so much, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to be speaking at the PeopleFirst Global Summit. Really excited for the session ahead.
Well, we're grateful to have you here, and over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Martha, and a warm welcome to everyone online. I hope those that have been following the session so far have gotten plenty out of it. And it's a fantastic topic to be going 24/7 or 24 hours and going into many different aspects of it. As Martha mentioned, I am the VP of Global Sales Development and the site leader for the Irish office in Galway. For Diligent. I've been with the company coming up on 4 years now. And this topic around guiding your team and talent development is really close to my heart. So really delighted to have the opportunity to speak with you all today on it. And I think certainly Steve Jobs said it very well when he said the only way to do great work is to love what you do. And if you haven't found it yet, keep looking, don't settle. Before I kind of get into a few kind of principles that I lead by, at least when it comes to North Star and talent development, I'm just going to share a short story with you around my own journey and my own motivations for speaking on this topic. And I guess if I look back at my own career, I kind of fell into lots of different things. Coming out of secondary school or high school, I had a very influential teacher who told me I'd be great at engineering, so I did engineering. After a year of engineering, I figured out I hated coding, so I started gravitating towards more business subjects. And that took me into a postgrad in advertising with e-commerce and ultimately into the media business, working in radio for 6.5 years. I was certainly a very timid and very, I guess, more task-oriented individual when I started out, and I very much wanted to impress. So I certainly had no idea of what I wanted to do myself, but I had a good idea of what people wanted me to do. So I did it, and I did it really well. And I progressed in radio and did quite well, leading a couple of radio stations in Dublin from a commercial side of things. And then I realized that I just didn't want the next step up, which would have been CEO of a couple of stations in Dublin. So I moved to, at the time in the mid noughties, a fairly lesser known company, at least, called Google. Um, and I'd always grown and been successful in radio because I could teach, and my unique selling point was teaching. And then I went into Google and started leading teams that had experience in digital sales. And my unique selling point overnight was eradicated. And I spent the first 6 months in Google trying to leave Google, which seems like career craziness if you think of it now. But I just had totally lost my confidence. I didn't feel I could lead or add any value. And I was running up against a manager at the time that I just didn't jive with. I had a very different experience of being led by. And then after 6 months, I had a change of manager and a total different change of perspective when it came to adding value as a leader and in myself, where my manager started to identify my ability to tell stories and sell the invisible, which radio was at the time. Google had just acquired YouTube, and we were far from, at the time, number one in the video or the display space. So I had a whole different perspective on how I could add value and think about myself in terms of what motivated me and got me excited. And I really enjoyed that journey in Google, working across multiple different teams. And I found, I guess, that North Star in myself around working with people and learning from people that you really respect, that challenges you, but makes you think very deeply about what makes you happy. And that's when I started to form, I suppose, real clear ideas around what made me happy at work. And that was having an impact. So being in a situation where if you bring your A game, you make a big difference. If you don't, unfortunately, you make a big difference for the wrong reasons. And I had a really powerful piece of feedback that I got towards the end of my tenure in Google, which was the best piece of career advice that I've ever had, and that was very simple. And we have a habit of complicating career development and investing so much in resourcing around it. But the clear advice I was given was, are you happy and are you learning? And quite simply, if both of them are yes, you're in the right place. And you shouldn't question it just because you've seen something on Instagram of someone having a great time and making a million on a side hustle in a matter of months, or your LinkedIn profile is being overran with peers and that are going up in the world or seem to be going up in the world. It's very much an introspective look at, am I happy and am I learning? And if both of them are yes, you're in the right place. If one is a no, do something about it. If both are a no, do something about it urgently, because you're probably not in the right place. And I think upon reflection of that feedback, I actually left Google and I moved to a retargeting startup called AdRoll, on the back of a few US Googlers moving there and going into high level positions in the US. And I set up the office in Ireland, and in Dublin, for their EMEA headquarters. And again, that was the North Star that was driving me into that operation. Was there's people I was going to work with that I really, really enjoyed working with and I could learn from. And it was a founder-led organization, and the passion that founders have when it comes to their values and why they do what they do was something I hadn't experienced to the same level in Google. And that North Star of wanting to be happy and wanting to learn took me away from the bright lights of the big brand of Google and into the startup or semi-startup space of land and expand, which I was responsible for. And ultimately, that has been a big North Star for me over the last couple of years. And I've made lots of mistakes, but it's taken me a long time to realize that it starts with you and it's very personal career. It's not, career ladders help and resources help, and all of those things help significantly, but nothing beats and can have as big an impact as a really personal conversation with and guiding that conversation for folks to figure out what they actually want to do in terms of their North Star. And that is, for me, by far the most powerful weapon that we have from a engagement perspective and talent development and retention perspective, is to get behind the surface level of the staff that we have and have them really think hard about what makes them happy and what drives them, what success looks like. And this bleeds so much into the type of talent that you bring into frontline management. Because no matter what I do in my organization or Brian Stafford, our CEO, does, will never have the same impact on frontline staff as their direct manager will. They influence how people feel every day. And the more that they can be influenced in a way that is engaging, that is playing to their strengths, challenging areas of development, but in a very personalized and targeted way. There's not a cookie cutter approach to how career development should be experienced. It has to be personalized. And for me, this is the currency that we can deal in, because increasing salaries and countering salaries of staff moving, it's a symptom of something else. I'll guarantee that if people feel really engaged and they're having very, very developmental conversations about who they are and what they enjoy and where they want to go to in terms of their North Star in the future and how they're going to get there, that's worth a huge amount. And it's hard to put a dollar value or euro value or pound value against having that engagement and support within an organization. So certainly be very mindful of the talent you hire into an organization, but double click on the frontline management and management levels, because it's those conversations and how they make people feel that is by far the strongest element of employee retention and development, that I've come across, at least. And I've, to a certain extent, realized that the long way, and it's taken a few gray hairs and maybe 20 years to where I am now. But over the last 10 years, I've definitely started to realize who I am a lot more. And I wish I'd had that help from the very beginning to realize that, because I might have still made lots of mistakes, but I would have been running towards something rather than running. It's the difference between seeing the finish line in front of you and running on a treadmill and going nowhere. And that's a really, really important element in my mind as to how we make people feel in the workplace, that can have dramatically positive effects on them both personally and professionally. And that's what I mean by it isn't a one size fits all. It is so important that it is personal and it is intimate. And I think these are areas that perhaps we've started to shy away from as we've moved into hybrid and remote environments, that maybe there's been a bit of a break in the circuit. And I think there certainly has, in terms of personal relations and employee relationships with their managers and mentors. And if I think back to even a couple of weeks ago, we had a new employee that was doing their development plan with myself and their manager for the first time, and we went very deep in terms of what success looks like and what makes them happy, and taken a lot of time to stay at that space before going into putting a plan in place, because there's no point putting a plan in place if you don't clarify what that North Star is. What are you running towards? And it's one of probably those few situations from a HR perspective, and I know we've got a lot of HR leaders and on this call, I'm sure, um, where the employee got quite upset, um, but not from a bad perspective or a negative perspective. It was very much from a realization of what actually does drive them and make them happy and what they're passionate about, and probably for the first time really understanding why they're passionate about certain things. And in that instance, it was to counter their own experiences when they were younger growing up and other things that, were quite heavy discussions, but ultimately the realization of why they want to coach and help each other and help other people, and really move into that space of helping people be successful and giving them that edge, as a mentor and a coach, was a big topic that came out of that discussion, because the individual in question didn't have that, either from a childhood perspective or even early career perspective. And they've found it now, and they want to give that back to everyone they work around. And that was such a driving force within the individual that the person was moved to tears. And again, I think it's going there. That is the piece that I think a lot of folks put the handbrake up on, and they don't go there. But to be able to connect the dots to that person, to be so clear as to what their North Star is of what they want to do and what makes them happy, that for me drives this flywheel effect, that if your day-to-day operations will soar, and your whatever your job is will go to a whole different level if you know your why and where it's going to. And that's what development planning and personalized development planning is. It's identifying that North Star of anywhere between 2 to 5 years from where you are right now, and connecting what you do every day as a logical pathway to building the skills to get to where you want to get to in the future. And it's so important to ensure that, from my perspective at least, that staff know that conversation is just as important as your KPIs that you're working to every day. Because for me, it is the fuel that will drive high performance and consistently high performance environments. Um, and it is that running towards something that is exciting and aligns with your values and your motivations, that will have you turning up every Monday morning. In Ireland, at least, is often grey at this time of the year and rainy, but there's a bounce in your step, and you know why you're doing what you're doing. So helping people identify that North Star, or that why, is the fuel that drives day to day, week to week, month to month high performance, because it's working towards something you really want to achieve. So that's a little bit, I guess, about my own journey and how I found out the why for myself. It took me about 10 years, but I got there in the end, and I've used that as my North Star of decision making. And then from a more recent experience, to kind of highlight just how important those conversations are with staff, to help them make sense of where they're going and make sense of what they do every day to drive high performance and engaged cultures. So next, I'm just going to take you guys through just a short kind of structure around the North Star and how I frame and kind of hold those conversations with the folks that I work with. And I find the structure really, really helpful when it comes to the understanding of the process and then connecting the dots between what you do on a short-term, medium-term, and long-term basis. So this is that first piece that I mentioned or referenced earlier in that kind of example with a staff member in recent weeks. It's that where you want to be in 2 to 3 years time, but it's separated from a binary role, because what I often find is if someone's a sales development representative and wants to become an account executive, that's a very narrow lens of what you want to achieve, and that peripheral vision of where you could develop and grow into starts to become blurred, and you're cutting out so many opportunities to learn and grow that you just can't see because you're so fixated on the end goal, which is in this example an AE or an account executive. So this is where I spend a lot of time, and it feels like it should be the quickest piece, because what I ask from folks here is, in 2 to 3 years time, in a sentence, how would you describe what you'd like to be experiencing? What would be that state that you'd be really, really happy with and really, really excited to achieve? And this is where every word matters, and it has to be succinct, and it has to be meaningful, and it has to be more than anything else really, really exciting and challenge you, but something you really desire to experience in that 2 to 3 year time frame. And this piece, for some people, I think when you really probe into it, lots of people have an idea off the top of their head, but then you break it down into experiences and really get into why, and push people hard to really sense check that their why is solid. And it's not because everyone else is doing it, it's because they're doing it. Again, are they going to be happy, and are they going to be learning? So this can take up to 6 weeks. And I kind of run 6 weekly cycles when it comes to check-ins on people's development planning. So nailing this first piece is what it's all about, because again, this is what you're running towards. This is what everything should lead towards, and this is your why. So shortchanging the North Star will result in putting plans in place that run fast, but with the lights off. You could end up anywhere. This is about putting the lights on and knowing where you're going. So taking the time to succinctly nail in a couple of sentences or a sentence or even a few words, what are the experiences that you want to be going through and core skills that you want to have in 2 to 3 years time, where you can say, I am really, really happy with where I am, and I'm really proud of being able to get there. So that's the first piece, is taking that and having that deep conversation around that North Star and that why. So once you have that, then you roll it back and you think about, okay, if that's where I want to be in 2 to 3 years time, my North Star, what are the key skills that I need to develop over the next 12 months that are going to be critical to me being on the right track and achieving that North Star? So again, take an account executive as an example, or being in a commercial position, the type of skills that you might want to develop there might be negotiation skills or closing skills, or storytelling. And when I work with employees then in those examples is, if they're the top skills that you're going to need to be really, really strong to be in a position to be able to develop into a commercial and into a commercial role and have the experiences you've identified in your North Star, where would you rank yourself today on those skills? And how do you move them up the ladder in terms of competency and confidence? So this is an area where you get into that kind of more medium term view of 12 months from now. Here are the specific skills in a stack rank that are most important to me, because I know if I nail and develop these skills, I'm going to be a lot closer to my North Star. And again, this is a line or two to identify the skill and describe what success in that skill looks like in 12 months' time. And again, this isn't pages and pages of documentation. It's very clear, succinct insight as to what good looks like and what you're aspiring to achieve. So what we have here then is your North Star, which is 2 to 3 years from now, something you're super pumped and excited to get to. And then you're rolling it back to the priority skills in 12 months' time that if you're really, really improved at and developed, then you're on the right track to influence the outcome, which is your North Star that you want to achieve ultimately in the longer term. So then in order to get to that skill development and those priority skills that you want to work on, you then drop it back to more granular tactical actions that you're going to take in 1 to 3 month sprints that are going to develop those skills. So that's taking a skill, and in example we use there, an account executive type of commercial skill, which might be looking at negotiation skills, for example. Getting granular on that might be breaking it down into 3 to 4 different actions that you're going to take that very much follows a SMART goals methodology of what is the developmental area, why is it important, how will you know that you've got there in terms of achieved it, whose help do you need to get there, and by when. So you're getting into this very focused approach then of what are the component parts of that skill that I'm going to perfect and develop in 1 to 3 month sprints over the next 12 months. Because if I do this granular effort and work, I know that I'm going to be able to influence my 12-month skill development priorities. And I know if I achieve that, I'm on track to achieve what great looks like in the next 2 to 3 years. And that is something that's really important, because this granular piece is that pathway. It's a very clear, this is what I will do, why I'm doing it, whose help I need, what outcome I expect, and by when. And the important thing to note about all this, this is and should be a fluid document, because people will learn as they go that the stuff they love doing, they want to do more of it, or the North Star might change, might be personal or professional reasons for that. And that's fine too. But so long as it becomes this fluid, personalized document that you're working with the individual on, it's always their North Star document of how they're going to get to where they want to get to. And it's by doing and trying that often you learn that you like or dislike, or find out other things that you haven't even experienced that you want to develop. And that this is the framework that really, really helps that happen. But that granular piece is so important, because you're getting into this I said, I did, and we're holding ourselves accountable then in the final step, which is regular check-ins with your mentor and or manager, depending on whether they're the same person or not. That's facilitating this coaching experience. And this is where you hold each other accountable. And listen, like I said, life gets in the way, and things can happen that you miss a deadline, and that's fine. But we should hold ourselves accountable, and sometimes be a bit annoyed if we don't hit the markers that we said we're going to hit. Because what often happens is, this is a great exercise on paper. You start with great gusto the first couple of sessions, and then KPIs get hard and the business is tough and people just don't have time for this. This is, for me, as if not more important than your KPIs, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, because this is the why. And people will increase their effectiveness, I believe, fundamentally, and I've seen it multiple times, on a daily basis, weekly, monthly basis, if they're running towards something they're passionate about. At your peril would I neglect the precious time that is boxed off for this type of these conversations, and ensuring that we understand why things have changed, we understand why we might have missed a deadline, but we're going to get back on track because this is important. And it's that type of flow that's really important. So again, to close off this section, is your North Star is that 2 to 3 year where you want to be in the future. Prioritizing developmental areas are the core skills that are going to get you there over the next 12 months in terms of priority areas you're going to develop in terms of skill set. Getting granular are the tactical things you're going to do to get to improve those skills over the next 12 months. And then checking in is keeping you honest and ensuring that your North Star is as you want it to be. And I'll leave you on these couple of points, which is takeaways for what they're worth, and I hope they're worth something. Is it's all about personalization, it's all bespoke, and for me it's all about meaningful conversations that go there. And you have to go there because they're the ones that matter, and people don't go there anymore with those type of personal conversations as much as maybe we might have in the past. But it's so important to help people, particularly early, any tenure, but particularly early stage staff, to understand and help them understand themselves who they are, what makes them happy, and what they value most, and it should be their plan. So personalized development plans create that supportive environment. So when you're having those more targeted conversations, there needs to be a level of strong trust and understanding as to why we're going to have conversations like this, and making sure all parties are comfortable going there um, ahead of time as well, because it can be quite difficult for some people, managers included, to go there with those kind of conversations. But important that the environment is as supportive and clear as possible. Encourage employees to discover their North Stars. So it is on them. Your job, from my perspective at least, is to coach and facilitate, ask open-ended and probing questions, but you're not answering them. It's their document, it's their North Star, it's their development plan. And that's where the accountability and ownership thrives, is when it becomes an employee's North Star and their words and their commitments, and providing that continuous feedback and adjusting the plan as needed. I just touched on that, but it's so important to ensure that it tweaks and changes, it's fluid, but it's reflective of what's exciting the employee in the short, medium, and long term. And yeah, at the end of the day, be a mentor, not just a manager. Your role for me as a manager is to tap into the superpower that everyone has, and that's different. And that comes with a very guided and considered conversation that is very much about active listening and reading body language, and really personalizing the conversation from tone to questioning and everything that goes with that to the person, and being very, very present and fully present. And there you go.
Rory, thank you so much. Listening to your presentation, I can really tell that you've taken this to the next level in terms of really making a personalized people first experience for your employees at Diligent, which is just great to hear. As we are kind of leaning towards the next presentation, just a closing remarks from you. From an employee perspective, for someone who's really struggling to discover what their North Star is, and I know you said that at the end of your presentation, it's on them. They need to kind of ask, what sort of questions would you ask them? A couple of questions quickly. What can they ask themselves to discover that if they're really struggling with this?
Yeah, great question, Martha. I think just a couple of quick questions would be, when was the last time you felt successful, and why? And you can run that thread down. Why was that successful? What feeling did it give you? What was the validation? Was it you? Was it what someone gave you? And try to kind of move that conversation leaning towards areas that you can visibly see that they're excited about those topics when they talk about them. And genuinely ask them, are they happy and are they learning, and what makes them happy? And they're so hard questions to answer. Thankfully, I'm on the right one side of the table asking them, not being asked them. But it is those questions and being comfortable with silence to help people think through them, and give people consolation that most people, you all think that everyone's got it. Most people don't got it. It's not just because, social media paints a picture of success doesn't mean that people are actually successful. Successful people are the happy people that are learning. And you can be that person if you choose to be, and I'm here to help you get there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you spending time with us today. And thank you. Thanks again.
Of course. Thanks to you, Martha. Thank you.
Bye.